rediscover, record, and remember. Welcome to the Voices of Vanishing Places. So, before we start off, do you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Hi, my name is Haady Mattar. I'm 25, turning 26 this year, and I'm a part of the Arab Network Association as well as the Anaf Youth Collective. I also run a Believe in Giving project to provide community aid to underprivileged families in Singapore, especially during Ramadan.
All right, thank you so much. So today we're going to kind of center around the heritage site called Sallim Mattar Mosque. So my first question to you is, what role does the mosque play in intersecting the Malay and Mattar communities at the site?
We have to first look at the role that a mosque plays in society, in the community, in the environment, in the city or town or village, right? So mosque to us Muslims, mosque is more than just a place of worship. It's a place for communities, for youth to meet other youths who are like-minded, who are from the same religion. It's a place for us to network. It's a place for us to rest mentally as well. So those kind of general services or the space itself, it provides a form of amenity for the Muslims in general. But if we're talking about the historical context of Sallim Mattar Mosque, then when it was built in the 1930s, it was initiated by Sallim Mattar himself, which is my great great grandfather. Yes, my great great grandfather. So he sort of rallied the uh, Muslims around the area who are predominantly Malays who are living in the vicinity to raise funds, and he matched up the same amount so that he can um, have enough pool enough money and resources in order to build a mosque in the community, because back then there wasn't a proper mosque yet, and that is why the community decided to name the mosque after him. So it became sort of like a communal area as well as a place of worship for the Malays as well as the Mata families and other Muslims who were living around the area and settling there around that time in Kalang. Yeah.
Right. And just branching off of what you said about the Kalang area, in my research, I found out that around in the 1930s, the British colonial government developed the Kalang airport, which caused many Malay residents to resettle around the Mattar and Salim Road. So, how do you think this kind of historical development influenced the establishment of the mosque, or also influenced like the communities around that area?
That's a very good question, actually. I actually came across that during when I was doing my own research regarding my family. So what I found out while asking my elders, based on their experience, those who have lived through the days, mainly my grandfather, who was the oldest. So he shared with me how the community within the mosque actually changed throughout the years. So when we look at when the British was trying to build the airport, they had to clear a lot of residential area because, as you know, an airport takes a lot of land space, right? Um, to be fair, a lot of people were compensated, the Malays as well as people from my family. So personally, for my family, we were compensated and we had to shift to the Geylang area, which is not too far from the initial space. However, the areas around the mosque was still preserved. So until to this day, we still have the mosque is still there in the same spot, as well as the orphanage beside it as well, which was previously owned by the land was previously owned by my great great grandfather as well. So when we look at how the environment or the landscape changes from being sort of like a residential area, residential estate, to a more industrial like space, like at first the airport, and then we look at it now, which is the Matar area is predominantly factories. You do have some residential area, but offices, and factories, a lot of working spaces. So that will naturally change the attendees at the mosque, and then you will see a huge shift from maybe residential locals to a good mix of locals as well as foreigners, people who are working, and not those ones that are living there who are attending the mosque events as well as Friday prayers. Yeah.
Right. And I think similar to how how like the residents, the devotees, also change over time. I also noticed that the mosque itself went through several upgradings since its founding, like in the early 1900s. So how do you think this modernization impacts like the cultures, the memories, or even the people who attend the site itself?
Okay, so from from my perspective, the upgradings, okay, in general, mosques tend to be upgraded around 15 to 20 years, every 15 to 20 years. So since I was born, which was around 25 years ago, at least there was one major renovation for the mosque itself. If you visit the mosque now, the compound is not as big as other mosques, as well as the capacity itself. So if you so how it works in general, right, is that if there are more attendees, if there is more usage of a certain mosque, there's more demand for space. When there's more demand for space, they will during the renovation they will try to maximize capacity and construction so that it can accommodate more people. So what an example would be uh, the Gufran Mosque in Tampines. It is the only mosque in the Tampines, and Tampines has a large Muslim population. So the recent renovation, which was around 5 to 7 years ago, um, it was a huge renovation where it consumed a bit more land than it used to, as well. And then because of that, it is now the largest mosque in Singapore, which was previously Sultan Mosque, which is also a tourist attraction, right? But now it is Gufran Mosque because of the demand. So if you apply the same thinking and analogy back to Sallim Mattar Mosque, because there are less residential areas, there will naturally be less attendees, and there is less capacity, or less demand for a larger capacity, which is why to this day, even after renovation works, it is not huge. It's not huge by Singapore mosque standards, but it's still spacious for sure. I think it's if I remember correctly, it's 3 levels for praying space. We do have a fourth, but mainly is for classrooms, for learning, and for students. Yeah.
Mm. And I think that's kind of interesting because like it's like more of like a personal kind of take, but like are you in support of this kind of modernization? Because I feel like for some it might feel like, oh, like I went to this place like when I was really young, but then now it like, looks different, like feels different. So it just doesn't feel the same anymore. Like, are you kind of like in that side, or are you like, oh yeah, if it's like fresh and new, that's better for me? Like, kind of which side are you on in this debate?
I think that's a question that is very interesting because for me it really depends. If I'm being honest, okay, if you're looking at the mosque, if you're talking about the Sallim Mattar Mosque if you're being specific regarding the mosque, then I am actually for renovation and changes as it brings about, repairs, allows, reinforcement of foundation, major repairs. Like I'm sure things will start breaking down. It could be like the pipes, it could be the electricity or the wires, and I'm happy at the fact that Singapore takes pride in maintaining their structures, their building every few years. I think that is a testament to how forward progressing Singapore is. As we say in Singapore, majulah Singapura, onward Singapore. And it's a testament to how Singapore and Singaporeans, we're always looking forward, we're always changing. And if we compare to we're talking about the renovation of the mosque and it changing, we compare to the country where it's
Mm,
residing. The country itself changes every 5 to 10 years rapidly, you know. So I would say it's on par or on pace with how much it's being progressing.
mm,
But there is a downside for sure. I think nostalgia really plays a huge part. Um, but I think growing up in Singapore, you would tend to figure it out or learn that it's something that we just have to let go because everything changes around us.
mm,
So it's something we just have to accept and live with. But we do reminisce, we do miss the times. And for us optimistic Singaporeans, which is not a lot actually, we do take the effort to see the good in these changes, which brings about
mm.
a lot of cleanliness. And I think um, a huge factor on why Singapore is known as a very clean country is because of all these changes, renovations, and reinforcements to the structures and the environment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I mean, even, like 6 years ago when I came to Singapore, it's quite different than how it is now. So I would definitely agree with your statement that it is changing very fast, it is very progressive. But still, it's interesting how even after years since the mosque has been built, the Mattar name has remained attached very tightly and associated with the mosque very well. So, why do you think this name or kind of like this association has been preserved for so long over time?
Okay, so for that, we have to look at how mosques in Singapore are named, right? So there are mainly two ways on how a mosque is named after something or someone. So we have mosques that are of general names like Sultan Mosque or Kufran Mosque, and these are usually because there are maybe multiple benefactors or multiple people
Mm,
contributing to the building itself, and there's no one major benefactor, right?
mm,
If it's even more of a communal effort, and maybe, or even if it's government or association organization initiated, then they would adopt a general name. Some benefactors, even though they contribute greatly, they do not want to be known. But if you look at mosque with the name of people in it, it is usually because they are the greatest benefactor. And um, for example, for Sallim Mattar Mosque, he contribute financially, not only financially, but his time and effort as well, more than 50% of the cost, bearing the cost of the initial construction. He does have also experience in planning the construction of a mosque because even this is an example of why the community actually insisted on naming it after him because of his contributions not only in the village itself but across Singapore. He was in multiple boards and organizations, and one notably would be the board of trustees for the Sultan Mosque. He was actually one of the four Muslims, one of the four community leaders as well, who was in charge of designing the current layout of the Sultan Mosque. Yeah, so him, Dawood, and I think two other people. They did hire foreign architects. I think it was Dutch or French, but obviously at the end, these four leaders were the one piloting it and everything. They just didn't have that um, technical knowledge to execute it. So they had to hire people with specialized expertise. But it was mainly this group that was the driving factor for what became the Sultan Mosque layout today. So
mm,
you can see the difference between his contribution to the Sallim Mattar Mosque as well as the Sultan Mosque, because the Sultan Mosque, it was more of a collaborative effort
mm,
compared to the Sallim Mattar Mosque.
mm. Right, and it seems like the mosque itself has a very like comprehensive background. But I'm wondering like does like even when the physical building is still very alive, do you think like these, intangible, memories or context of the mosque like do you believe it's like disappearing or overlooked as time passes by?
If I'm being honest, I think this answers the previous question as well. And it links to the one before that. Um, if we're looking at the preservation of the historical context or the heritage, honestly, there is not much. Um, if you use like the mosque as an example, right? The only thing that is generally being preserved is the name. Everything changes from the structure to the community, the people residing, the people managing it. Everything has changed. So it can become it comes to a point where you can put the analogy of the ship of Theseus, where everything is being replaced and everything is new. Is it still the same mosque? So, and that is why it is such a important thing is an important reason to maintain the name itself, because it serves as a reminder to the community who contributed to the mosque. Why was this mosque here? And it can serve as not only a reminder but a prompt as well for people who are new and want to learn about the historical context of buildings. The names that we are preserving in Singapore, everything changes, from the structure to the people um, residing or using the space. So the only thing that is being constant is the name. And when you are entering a different space, or it's the first time visiting a place, you can be curious about the name of the place, especially if it's named someone, like, okay, who is this? And that kind of prompts you to dig into the historical context. Um, but additionally, to answer your question, I think Singaporeans are not, in general, they are not hyper keen on knowing the historical context or heritage, unless maybe they have kind of a familial affiliation or association with a place. And not only that, but they also must have the innate drive to look for in it, because I do have friends whose families have histories on different places, but they still don't have the kind of interest or the push to find out more about it. And that's why I say, that's why I want to say that I want to comment on you on trying to find out more about places, even though it's not related to you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. And like, do you think one of the reasons why Singaporeans are like unaware, or I would say a bit like distant from the history, is also because of the Singapore's like motto of like, we always have to be like progressive, we always have to look forward. Like, do you think there's like a connection between that as well?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think that is definitely a major factor on why the newer generation use or they are not thinking about preserving the heritage, because they are not at the age yet where there are younger generations who are questioning things. So, for example, right now we do have groups or association. Like, I do have of communities of friends who are interested in this sort of history, right? And we are questioning the elders right now when we want to find out more about certain things, and they are able to answer because they have lived through it. They have
Right.
lived through the construction, the modernization, the industrialization of Singapore. They've seen it with their own eyes, so they're able to answer that. But when it comes to maybe when we are taking their place as kind of the older generations, yeah, we're gonna be dumbfounded. We're gonna be awestruck
Yeah.
when the newer generations ask us, like, how did this place came to be? Why is this place like this? And that is why, like, me and a few of my friends or the people that I know who are interested, we take it upon ourselves to sort of learn about our own heritage or our own areas. So it's sort of a preservation of memory. And thankfully, we are born in the era of the internet, so it's really easy
Right.
to exchange information, preserve information, and things like that. Whereas back in when we are doing research with our elders, and we're asking them everything they know, it's all in their head. They don't keep it in a book or something, which to me is really dangerous. If I'm being honest. Yeah. So I don't know whether the mindset of the younger Singaporeans or Singaporeans of my generation will change on their outlook towards heritage and history. I think Singaporeans are very future-minded, career-minded, forward-thinking, and that is their priority in life. It's always a rat race here. Um, yeah. So because of that, I feel like there's an even greater or a grave need for people like me and you to learn about um, the historical context between buildings and places in Singapore in order to preserve it.
I think I'm just very curious because I mean,
Uh-huh.
as an international student,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like I can view Singapore heritage with a lot of respect, but I mean, ultimately, it will be very different from the way local Singaporeans look at their own culture or their own heritage. So, in your eyes, like, what do you think are the differences between how maybe an expat could look at a heritage versus like a local Singaporean can look at it?
Okay. This is a nice question. Um, so for me, I've been in Singapore my whole life. I was born and raised here. My family has been here for six generations from my dad's side. So yeah, I think I can speak pretty well for Singaporeans. When I'm gonna compare how Singaporeans view heritage or history compared to foreigners, I will be comparing based on my friends who come here. So I do have quite a few international friends who like travel, and these are people I meet during my travels, and I take the effort to kind of host them whenever they're here. And the first thing or my priority is always to show and explain the heritage around Singapore. What kind of ethnic groups are there, why we have because that kind of explains how we have so many variety of food, why there so many different ethnicities, and how I think race also is a huge factor on how our society functions as well. So it's a good gateway to kind of explain how Singapore works or functions in general. So as a Singaporean, I think growing up in Singapore, being surrounded by a lot of cultures and religions and races, we tend to kind of overlook and underappreciate the diversity or the history, the rich history that we have, because we take it for granted. We've always had that, we've always seen it growing up. And that's something I realized when my friends come over and they realize, like, there's not many places outside of Southeast Asia or even Singapore that is like Singapore, a place where many people of different backgrounds uh, are working together in a progressive society, a society that functions really well as well in general. So they are really, awestruck, and they keep complimenting about how nice it is, and it is like a dream to live or work here. Whereas I think Singaporeans, we tend to, we like to complain. I think it's a nature, it's a trait that allows Singaporeans to associate with. One I'm not proud of, and I do my best to not have that trait. Um, but you see a stark difference. I think it's always the at the end of the day, it's always, the grass is always green on the other side. So Singaporeans will tend to complain about, of course, I agree with the high cost of living, or if there's like too many people and things like that. Whereas foreigners or tourists or expats, people who are not native, when they come here, they are more appreciative, or they realize how beautiful Singapore
Right.
is. Yeah. Yeah, I think a classic example could be how my friend from the UK came a couple of months back, and her favorite activity to do in Singapore was to run in the central area, because she mentioned how nice it is, how walkable the city is. I think we really take that for granted for sure. But not only that, but how the architecture is really diverse. We have like really modern buildings. We have classic shop houses. We have a lot of temples, mosques, churches, all in a row in the same road. And to them, or to her and my friends, it's something kind of unorthodox. Whereas for us, it's such a norm, you know.
Right.
So I think that's the at the forefront. It's the biggest difference on the viewpoints between someone not from Singapore and someone from Singapore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting because I think it's very easy to think that, like whatever's, part of your daily life, that might be a really like special or awing event for another person. So yeah, I really agree with that. Thank you for listening. VVP will come back with more stories, more voices.